Hello my friends, welcome back to Maltana.com. It's good to be back and recording those tutorials for you again, so let me show you what I've got for you today. We all work with 3D cameras and we all hate them from time to time due to the fact that it's quite hard to set keyframes in order to have the camera do the things that we want it to do. So today I'm going to show you a very simple camera rig that will help you in many cases to create a very nice and smooth camera motion. So this is a scene that I've built to show you what it's gonna look like. So we have basically a 3D cube which is made of 3D layers, and we have a camera that is orbiting around the cube, as you can see, also kind of tilting down and zooming in onto the cube as well. So if you ever try to do something like that in After Effects using regular keyframes, then you know it's not an easy task. So today I'm going to show you how to build a very simple camera rig that will help you out in those kind of situations. So let's just jump in. Let's create a new project, create a new composition, 500 by 300, that's going to be just fine. Let's add a new solid, make comp size, that's right, make it a 3D, call it floor, let's align it correctly. Move it down, scale it up, maybe add a text layer, camera rig, let's make it black or whatever the color, we're gonna change that later on anyway. Make it 3D and maybe let's move the floor up a little bit so it kinda, yep, that's right, cuts the layer so it really sits on the floor. And now we can add a light to the scene. A point light should be fine. And enable cast shadows, that's right. And enable cast shadows for the layer as well. And move the light back. Like that, okay. That's kind of nice. And maybe let's add an ambient light anyway, just an additional light. Make it an ambient light, decrease the intensity, just to have something to work with, right? It doesn't have to be pretty, just to prove the point of making a camera rig. So right now, if we're going to add a camera in, whatever camera, maybe 35mm preset, that's going to be fine. And we've got all the great tools for orbiting and such, right? But if we do that and try to keyframe this, you know what happens, right? Let me just show you in case you don't. I'm just going to create a position keyframe and a point of interest keyframe as well. And move it here and maybe rotate it like that. Point of interest didn't work. Wasn't required in this case. Okay, so let's just turn it off. Just a position keyframe. And this is what happens. Nasty. There are of course a couple of things you can do to avoid that, but if you would like to have this camera zooming into the object or zooming out or maybe just banking a little bit, so kind of rotating, it's getting really hard to do. So let's forget about that. Let's delete the keyframes, reset the camera so it sits in its default position. The origin of our scene is exactly where the text is placed. So let's start building our camera rig. I'm going to hide the lights so they don't occupy too much space in our layer stack. And let's start. The key to creating a good camera rig is separating all the axes and all the dimensions that the camera can move within, if that makes any sense. So in other words, we're going to create a bunch of null objects. I don't think you can see it. Let's click it here. New null object. It has to be a 3D null, and this one is going to be for banking, so for kind of tilting your camera or your head if you prefer, left and right. So let's call this cam bank, and we're going to parent our camera to this null. So take a look what happens when I'm going to rotate it on the z-axis. This is banking, so kind of tilting your head left and right like that. So we have this done. It's pretty simple, right? So